in a benign scenario, probably none of us will have a job. My biggest fear, in one word, AI.
Musk has frequently highlighted the risk that AI poses to jobs across various sectors. As AI systems become more capable of performing tasks that were once the exclusive domain of humans.
But I do think that long term, in a benign scenario, any job that somebody does will be optional.
For example, self-driving vehicles powered by advanced AI could disrupt the livelihoods of truck drivers, delivery personnel, and taxi drivers.
Like if you want to do a job as kind of like a hobby, you can do a job, but otherwise the AI and the robots will provide any goods and services that you want.
In particular, Musk points to industries like manufacturing, transportation, and retail as being highly vulnerable to AI-driven automation.
I mean, there's a sort of age-old debate in history, like, you know, is history determined by these fundamental tides, or is it determined by the captain of the ship? Mm-hmm. This is both, really. I mean, there are tides, but it also matters who's captain of the ship. So it's a false dichotomy, essentially. But I mean, there are certainly tides. The tides of history are. There are real tides of history, and these tides are often technologically driven. If you say like the Gutenberg press, you know, the widespread availability of books as a result of a printing press, that was a massive tide of history, independent of any ruler. But you know, I think in stormy times you want the best possible captain of the ship. I mean, in terms of dating civilization, the start of civilization, I think the start of writing, in my view, that's what I think is probably the right starting point to date civilization. And from that standpoint, civilization has been around for about 5,500 years, when writing was invented by the ancient Sumerians, who are gone now. But the ancient Sumerians, in terms of getting a lot of firsts, those ancient Sumerians really have a long list of firsts. It's pretty wild. In fact, Durant goes through the list. It's like, you want to see firsts? We'll show you firsts. The Sumerians were just ass kickers. And then the Egyptians, who were right next door, relatively speaking, weren't that far, developed an entirely different form of writing, the hieroglyphics. Cuneiform and hieroglyphics are totally different. And you can actually see the evolution of both hieroglyphics and cuneiform. Like the cuneiform starts off being very simple, and then it gets more complicated, and then towards the end it's like, wow, okay, they really get very sophisticated with the cuneiform. So I think of civilization as being about 5,000 years old. And Earth is, if physics is correct, 4.5 billion years old. So civilization has been around for 1/1,000,000th of Earth's existence. Flash in the pan. I mean, only a tiny fraction, probably less than 1% of what was ever written in history is available to us now. I mean, if they didn't literally chisel it in stone or put it in a clay tablet, we don't have it. Yeah. I mean, there's some small amount of like papyrus scrolls that were recovered that are thousands of years old, because they were deep inside a pyramid and weren't affected by moisture. But other than that, it's really got to be in a clay tablet or chiseled. So the vast majority of stuff was not chiseled, because it takes a while to chisel things. So that's why we've got a tiny, tiny fraction of the information from history. But even that little information that we do have, and the archaeological record shows so many civilizations rising and falling.
It's not going in a unitary direction. I think there are certain aspects of the West that are going in a horrifically bad direction horrifically quickly. But there are elements in the West where things are going in a much healthier and better direction. So I don't think the West as a whole moves like some big hulking mass. I think there's trends, and it's a question of which will win out. And my operating assumption, which I think is impossible to argue with, is reality always wins. and that a worldview which comports to reality, which means based on truth, because that's what truth is, that which is real, will in the long term succeed. But how long that long term is the question on the table. And it's certainly going to be a lot of bad things, to put it mildly, in the interim, and are currently happening.
It would be a new frontier and an opportunity to rethink the whole nature of government, just as was done in the creation of the United States. Having direct democracy, like people vote directly on things, as opposed to representative democracy. So representative democracy, I think, is too subject to special interests and a coercion of the politicians and that kind of thing. So I'd recommend that there's just direct democracy. People vote on laws, the population votes on laws themselves, and then the laws must be short enough that people can understand them.